Hey, welcome to CineMike. For this episode, I'm going to review the Marvel Netflix 8-episode miniseries, The Defenders. This is the crossover event that teams up Daredevil, Jessica Jones, Luke Cage, and Iron Fist. It's the TV equivalent of the Avengers, and Marvel has been just as careful building up to this payoff. Each character has been established, some more successfully than others, but if they could hit this one out of the park, then it all would have been worth it. This story follows the Defenders as fate brings them together to save New York City and to stop the Hand from completing its ultimate goal. I like that the story has a well-defined three-act structure. The first act follows our heroes in their separate storylines, jumping off of where their previous seasons left them off. Slowly we start to see some crossovers, mostly with supporting characters. These are nice little appetizers that just raise anticipation for the main course. Then some of our heroes pair up, and there's fun moments where they clash initially. You get these little versus matches where they measure up their abilities. This section culminates with all four of them on screen together, which was a cheer out loud moment. What really works about this is feeling like we are starting off with continuations for each character's own show until they collide into one. This show really made the most of the running time that's granted for a TV series. They were able to take their time earning and paying off the team coming together better than a movie could. They built it up and delivered, and I geeked out. Now let's look at each of the four heroes individually. You have Charlie Cox returning for the third time as Matt Murdock, aka Daredevil, and he's definitely my favorite in the group. I think that the actor really grounds the character and makes him the most relatable. Well, that is when he's not pining over Elektra, but I enjoy the character's handicap also being part of his power. And also, I have a soft spot for Stan Lee created Marvel characters, and Murdock is the only one in the group that has that honor. In this show, his arc feels a bit like Frank Miller's The Dark Knight Returns. He's reached a point that he no longer wants to be the devil of Hell's Kitchen because of what he's suffered. So he wants to just be Matt Murdock, attorney at law, or so he tells himself. But he still hears the world calling out to him to be more. It's a battle that he tries to resist, but he gets pulled back in when he realizes that Elektra has been resurrected from the dead as Black Sky, weapon to the Hand. When he first emerges back in the Daredevil suit, it's a pretty awesome moment because it felt really earned by then. One of his first acts back in Red is to interrogate somebody by strangling them with the cord from his billy club. He was really intimidating and totally badass in that scene. Kristen Ritter returns for the second time as Jessica Jones, and she brings back her dry and sarcastic charm. She still would rather drown herself with booze and take on simple cases than having to actually serve the hero role. She tries to avoid it, but there's a part of her that can't walk away when she knows that someone's in danger. Like Murdock, she's also a reluctant hero in this. I will say that the reluctant aspect was maybe slightly overplayed. She says, "This isn't my fight," even though at that point she knows that there's a plot to destroy New York City. She's an enjoyable and unique personality to throw into this mix, and the team would not be the same without her. So I really enjoyed her and her scenes with Daredevil. I thought those two played off each other pretty well. Michael Coulter is back for the third time as Luke Cage, if you count his guest appearances on Jessica Jones, and this picks up with him being released from prison, which is how we left him off after his season. He's getting back into the world and feeling the need to continue to do good. Unlike Iron Fist, Luke is focusing on individuals rather than the bigger picture. He's a hero who stands up for the little guy and takes care of his neighborhood. So when he realizes that the smaller picture is part of the bigger picture, then he's pretty quick to jump on board. You can always count on Luke to do what needs to be done. I'd say he's probably the most reliable of the group. Finn Jones is jumping right off of his series into this as Danny Rand, aka Iron Fist. Or the immortal Iron Fist, as he likes to brag like a brat. Danny is still coming to terms with his failure to protect Kun Lun from a deadly attack, so he's struggling with his identity and the only purpose that he feels that he has left, which is to destroy the Hand. He's much more about the bigger picture than the rest of the group. He's not reluctant at all and is totally on board with fighting the big fight. For those of you that don't like Danny, keep in mind that he is very central to the plot here. After all, the Iron Fist is the sworn enemy of the Hand and is said to be the best weapon against them. Obviously his show was the most criticized of all of them, everything from the fights to Finn Jones's acting. Now, while some little issues do carry over here, like Danny is still a bit whiny at times, I was surprised that he began to grow on me here. I especially really enjoyed his interactions with Luke Cage. That was important to get right since the characters are friends in the comics. I just found that Luke brought out the best in Danny as a character and Finn Jones as an actor. They were really fun, and they also challenged each other. Danny helping Luke see the bigger picture, and Luke helping Danny think about the individuals. I do still feel like Danny is the weakest link, but I feel like they improved on him a little bit here. Scott Glenn also comes back to play Stick, the blind sensei that taught Matt and Elektra most of everything that they know, and he represents an underground group of warriors that are trying to defeat the Hand called the Chastity. He plays a decent-sized role in this story, and he's a character who you never know what he's going to do or what he's capable of. He's a very the end justifies the means type of guy. We have a new villain, with Sigourney Weaver stepping in as the leader of the Hand, Alexandra. We see previously established members serving below her with Gao and Iron Fist Bakudo. She and the rest of the Fingers of the Hand are facing death for the first time because the substance that grants them eternal life has run out. Like all dying things, they are desperate to cling to life, and are willing to go to extreme measures to do it. Weaver is obviously one of the biggest names that has graced this series so far, which is exciting, and she has this motherly quality to her that adds a unique tone to how she speaks and carries herself. I like that there is just enough there to allow some understanding to how she thinks. I feel like she was a good villain, but without ever being a great one. I don't think that they allowed her to live up to her full potential. In the end, she definitely can't compare to how great Kingpin was, for example. So the villains felt just slightly disappointing. You want a villain great enough to truly deserve the four heroes teaming up to take them down. And I don't feel like we completely got that here. We also have Elodie Yung returning as Elektra Natchios, aka Black Sky. Now, what is Black Sky? Well, apparently the writers weren't too concerned about it since they didn't even bother with much of an explanation. We keep hearing how she's a dangerous weapon and all of that, but whatever makes her so special is left really vague. That seems like some lazy writing considering how central the Black Sky is supposed to be to the plot. I will credit this show for fleshing out some backstory on the Hand and providing at least a few more answers, but there were still pretty significant holes that weren't filled in here. Twisting Elektra into a weapon for the villains definitely feels a lot like how Bucky was turned into the Winter Soldier to fight for Hydra. Except Captain America 2 did it better than this show, in my opinion. I'll say that when Elektra was operating as just a weapon in the story is when I liked her the most. But there is a certain point where she's back to being a cold, manipulating asshole again. But more on that later. Otherwise, we have a bunch of supporting characters from each of the shows that get mixed in there. People like Karen, Foggy, Trish, Malcolm, Misty, Colleen, Hogarth, and of course Rosario Dawson returning as Claire Temple. I enjoy seeing how the show decides to use all of them and at what points their stories cross paths, so that was all good. The action here is some of the best in all of the series. Like with the Daredevil seasons, the fight choreography is top-notch. The most impressive sequence is in episode 3, where a fight breaks out when Danny tries to confront Sigourney Weaver inside the Midland Circle building. It's the first time that all of the Defenders team up to do battle, and I was getting chills. Such an incredible geek-out moment as they battle their way through the building. It was so cool to see all four of the heroes work together as a team. Finn Jones also really stepped up with his choreography skills for Iron Fist and proved the doubters wrong. He was much more convincing in the action here, which shows that it was the production's fault for some of the weaker fights during Iron Fist's first season. It felt like Luke Cage got to showcase his strength with a lot more variety here, which was cool to see. Jessica Jones is a really cool character, but I feel like her having just the power of strength is somewhat redundant when you have Luke, who is both strong and bulletproof. I think it would have been a cool idea to have her fly during the show, just to give her a unique power to bring to the table. And for those of you that don't know, she can fly in the comics, so it would have made sense. Daredevil, though, by far is the most impressive fighter in the group. When he lays foes down, it's always with the largest variety of techniques and stunning acrobatic skills. But even though the show is amazing for fights, I will say that I kind of wish that there's a little more variety in the action. Sometimes you need to break up fistfights with a chase sequence or something else. Gal's a pretty good villain, but watching her fight looks about as ridiculous as watching Yoda flipping around during his lightsaber battle. There were so many cuts to stunt doubles and forced camera tricks with her just to make it work that it wasn't really worth it. The first two acts I felt were pretty strong in this, minus one or two petty little issues. But for me, it's in the third act that most of the problems emerge. Most of them were in the last two episodes, and these Marvel Netflix shows always start strong, but manage to be a little disappointing in the end. In the last episodes, the pacing gets a bit thrown off with some filler and a little too much setup right before the finale. Honestly, I've never been a big fan of the Han storyline in this series. It's always been too convoluted and undefined for my tastes. It was only in this show that just enough answers were provided that I began to invest a little with them. But then out of nowhere, there's a curveball thrown in there, and during the final parts of this show, it just never totally settled right with me. Many of my issues for this show came from Elektra. I honestly think that Elodie Yung was trying her best, but I really don't like Elektra in either of her appearances in this series. I mean, what's to like? I think that she's pretty badly written. I dare someone to clearly explain to me what her motivations were in the last part of this story. What did she want? All we get is some passing excuse from her that sounds like total BS. Anything that someone can come up with, I feel like would just be conjecture because there weren't enough answers. A badly motivated villain is just a bad villain in my book. Matt and Elektra's romance also just sucks. She's so psycho and unlikable. Why should I be invested at all in the relationship between these two? Why should I care if Matt can save her? That's a real issue for me because their relationship in many ways is at the heart of the story. Elektra brings out the worst in Matt as a character. She makes him into a reckless idiot and a bit of a jackass. I like Matt less when she's involved, and their relationship was one of my biggest issues with Season 2 of Daredevil. In that season, she turned him against his friends. He basically cheats on Karen because of her, and in this season, she makes him prioritize her over his team. He even abandons them during a fight because he's pining too much over her. It feels weird for me to say this because I like the character in the comics, but I hope that this version of her never comes back. Despite Elodie Yung doing the best that she can, way too much time has been wasted on her making Matt look bad. I just felt a little disappointed with how the Hand and Elektra storylines were resolved and the direction that was taken. Now moving on to the final confrontation, I will say that the action during it was pretty solid. It's not on the level of the fight from the third episode inside the Midland Circle building, but it's still well choreographed. I also feel that where they left the story off was a bit too predictable. So in the end, I think that The Defenders was overall a success, despite a few flaws. It wasn't quite the amazing show that I was hoping for, but it was still a damn good show nevertheless. There were a lot of moments that I was grinning and geeking out that were very satisfying. It was a huge and ambitious undertaking to team up these characters and their shows like this. It's truly an awesome time to be a nerd. There was a time when this kind of thing didn't feel possible, but Marvel time and time again has pushed the envelope and have shown the way of the future for entertainment. Now, how does The Defenders compare with the rest of the shows in the series? Well, I did a ranking in a previous video, and I'll leave a link for that in the description below if you want to see a more detailed review for them. But to sum up the results, here are where I place those shows. Now, where does The Defenders fall in this ranking? I'm going to put it in the second place slot. The reason it just barely placed above some of the others is for the geek out factor. This show made me feel like a kid to see these characters on screen together. I can't put it above Season 1 of Daredevil though because I think out of all the shows, that season still holds up as the best from beginning to end. Well, I think that I covered everything that I wanted to, so if you enjoyed this video then please click like, and also feel free to leave a comment below. Tell me if you agree or disagree, and I also welcome you to subscribe to my channel. You can now also follow me on Twitter at CineMikeNerd. So anyways, until next time, this is Mike, signing off.